So we've been talking about these economic effects, these high-order effects of the climate policy that we're seeing coming down the runway at us. But what does it actually mean in terms of the strategy setting of big industrial groups? Well, we're going to hear now from two, from Sumitomo Corporation, the European bit, and also from ThyssenKrupp Steel. First off, let's say hello and a big welcome to Graham Holman, Director of Sumitomo Corporation Europe.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. As the third of the four speakers, I don't think I'll keep you long. I just noticed a colleague helped me with these slides, and I think the footsteps are to show that we're going on a continuous journey rather than a carbon footprint, but I'll check that when I get back to the office. Just a bit of context. I'm an English lawyer by trade. I've worked in Sumitomo for just over 20 years, and I lived and worked in Japan from 1991 to 1998, so I feel a bit comfortable with the Japanese business culture. The slides I'm going to use today are for illustrative purposes, so please don't try to read everything. So, first one, just to show we are a global corporation. As you can see, I work in the European part. It is an industrial conglomerate which has business around the world. And I won't just say what we have done, but also what we are doing and also what we are hoping to do in the future. But it's important, I think, just to note for our journey is that, don't try and read this one, but Sumitomo Corporation is like 400 years old. And the business actually started with copper refining and copper mining at the Beshi mine. And the company had to also deal with environmental issues quite early on, deforestation and sulfur dioxide emissions causing extensive reforestation and recovering sulfuric acid for use in fertilizer. So this is just something, when you do get to a certain level in Sumitomo, you're taken to do hiking in this area where they've reforested the area, just to show the importance of those founders' precepts and 400 years of history. So the Sumitomo Corporation was actually founded as a trading house in 1919, and it's now what's called as an integrated trading company globally. So there are about 5 or 6 big Japanese companies that the phrase is doing for everything from noodles to satellites. I know the Japanese colleagues don't like that phrase so much, but it does show for non-Japanese just the width and the breadth of the business of something like Sumitomo Corporation. You may have heard of other companies like Mitsubishi, Marubeni, Mitsui, Itochu, etc. It is interesting because we do cover such a wide range of industrial goods and services involving really diverse supply chains. And regarding the energy transition itself, what we see is the progress or a lack of progress across these business sectors, and they're all moving at different speeds for this transition. And also, because we operate in different geographies, we can see that the priorities of each area, each region, each country are very different in relation to the energy transition. As you can imagine, in Europe, it's very different to what we see in the Middle East, and very different to what we see in Africa. And what we're seeing in the CIS, again, is also extremely different. They just have different priorities, and they're moving in different ways. And also, in our case, businesses can be very isolated. And that has worked quite well up to now. You have specialized businesses just dealing with their own thing. But regarding the energy, in the energy transition, we've seen that there needs to be more coordination and cooperation in each industry. And something we did in 2021 was to try to join all of these diverse businesses by having an energy innovation initiative. I think this is quite common in big companies. You have to get rid of the silos because the energy transition is covering everything. And as people have said many times, you need cooperation. And so what this is really is, it's an industry, organization-wide organization to look at the way we in our efforts to measure, transform, disclose, and offset emissions across the whole business. So if I can talk a little bit about sustainability management as us as a business example. I mentioned the business philosophy that we've had for 400 years and the corporate mission statement. So what they did at HQ level in Japan was to, along with the UN SDGs, was to develop 6 material issues. So because the business is so wide, this was meant to be as a lens that you can look through every business activity and then try to channel them towards enhancing sustainability management. For example, one of those material issues was achieving harmony with the environment. But this was too conceptual, and as the world has changed and moved on, what we needed to do was to put these targets into much more concrete goals for actually achieving sustainability. So this slide just shows that how 6 conceptual material issues were aligned as much more targeted than what we call social issues. So these were split into 2 categories of the development and evolution of society and sustainability. And one of those sections, of course, is mitigation of climate change. So within the company, what we had to do was formally recognize and implement these targets, which led to the transitioning of the business, acknowledging, though, of course, the particular challenges that we have as an industrial conglomerate. How do you arrange such a transition across so many industries, so many geographies? It's an ongoing journey. So the company is aiming for carbon neutrality by 2050, including energy generation, and also the challenge to realize a sustainable energy cycle, not only for our own business, but also to contribute to carbon neutralization in society through business cooperation with partners. There are multiple value chains that we are involved in, and having little experience of moving up and down the value chains, this is where you can work with partners enabled to really incorporate sustainability management. So also at HQ level, what they did was looking at a scenario analysis, which I think many businesses have done. So using the International Energy Agency's World Energy Outlook, you can look at every single business sector. So what we did is we referenced the 3 scenarios I think you're familiar with: the announced pledges scenario, sustainable development scenario, and net zero emissions scenarios. So you can see how the temperature is moving in those scenarios over the years. So what we did in 2022 was analysis of some key business areas: energy, natural resources, transportation, material industries, which include steel products, real estate, and then mapping out these expected industry and supply demand trends for the periods 2030 and 2050. So once you have that, you can then take specific measures to set out the risks and opportunities for each business in our company's portfolio. For example, I mentioned the material industry sector. So what we're doing there is promoting the development and introduction of ships and aircraft aimed at improving fuel efficiency and utilizing decarbonized and low-carbon fuels. So while the ambition for a lot of this is set out in headquarters in Tokyo, what we're trying to do, and what I'm trying to do, is strongly appeal for Europe's position as a leader in terms of regulation, as we've just heard, customer awareness, and also best business practice. So this is the first time for me to participate today, but it's a very valuable opportunity to listen, learn, and then take this back to my organization. We have some business partners like Equinor, and they are sort of pushing about, what are you doing for the energy transition? What are you doing about this? What are you doing about that? And in Europe, we can take these messages back to Tokyo headquarters, where maybe they're feeling less pressure on the regulatory side, on the customer side, on the best practice side. Of course, they're doing their own thing, but what we want to do is show how Europe is a leader and bring those messages back. So having talked through other conceptual matters, what I can move to is some of the business examples that we are seeing. So in Europe, we are involved in some offshore wind projects, Germany, Belgium, and the UK. And there was also an interesting project in the east coast of England called the Bacton project. And this is looking at repurposing existing oil and gas facilities to try to see about making blue hydrogen and then green hydrogen, and looking at who could be the off-takers. The distance to London is important. The export capacity is also important. So we are trying to get involved in these types of projects. Quite a few are under sort of some confidentiality MOUs, unfortunately. But in Norway, you may have heard of IMO Park in Oslo, and this is an EV leasing, car sharing and parking company. So we are investing in that as an example. So we also have city decarbonisation projects that we are hoping to invest in, and also in the UK, a UK alliance with an electrolyser manufacturer to cut hydrogen production costs. So because of the wide nature of our business, we have to look at all of the value chains, all of the businesses, and try to work in a consistent way towards the making the global energy transition work. But I'll be looking forward to that panel discussion, and thank you very much.